Hi, I'm Chris, and I'm going to talk about the stunted evolution of pixel technology.
My name is Darren, and my story is a national treasure.
I'm Carlos, and in space, no one can hear you camp.
What do all these things have to do with the word resolution? Find out now in this week's episode of History Bluffs. Hello and welcome to another episode of History Bluffs, where truth is stranger than fiction. I want to welcome now to the show your host, it's Alan.
Yes, it is. Thank you, host. Thank you, Tech. I am the host. Thank you, Tech, Adam.
You're welcome,
and thank you,
Alan.
Armchair Historians. Let's bring them back there, Adam. Thank you, everybody, for coming on here, and thank you for tuning in, you, the audience. And as you may or may not realize tonight, we have a topic, and the topic is resolution. Yes, thank you, digital audience. Adam, before we get started, those who've never seen our show before need to know what the rules of the game are, right?
That's right, they do. They do. Would you like to see those rules now,
I
Alan?
absolutely would love to see those rules, and those watching on YouTube get to read them right now, and I will read them along.
You got it, Alan. We've got a few rules. Here they are.
That's right, historians are inspired by the topic. The true stories will be factual, that they can't make any lies up if their stories are true. That's what makes them buffs. But if there is a bluff, which there is, that story will have to be fictional. They cannot have the crux of their topic be true in any way. And also, you, the audience, please, no helping. Yes, you have access to a computer right now, but the only help we want is that applause that you just heard right then and there. Excellent. Adam, I think that's about all we need to know, other than the timing of the rounds, right?
That's right. Our rounds are timed. They will begin at 75 seconds. Round 2, though, goes down to 60. And round 3 is the lightning round, the dreaded 45-second round.
That's right. And at the end of round 3, we will know who is the armchair historian and who is the history bluff.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will, Alan.
Yes, we will. And, hey, Adam, without further ado, can we bring on round 1?
Let's go to round 1.
All right, we're going to go right into the game here. And of order of the stacking here, I'm going to start with you, Chris. And your tale begins right now.
Okay, welcome. Thank you. Just as electric car batteries were first conceived in the 1800s, but squashed by competition from the more widely available and cheaper Model T Fords, the world could have had high-resolution imagery decades before the technology first became available on a large scale. If people had only listened to Elijah Buzkowski, and I'm going to apologize in advance for mashing his name up throughout the show, but Elijah Buzkowski at the 1851 London World's Fair, had they listened to him at that London World's Fair, it would have happened. The business of capturing images is hundreds of years old, but modern photography as we know it really came into focus in the early 1800s in Europe. In 1839, Sir George Eastman, who later would gain fame and fortune in the U.S. as co-founder of Eastman Kodak, he unveiled photographic images that lasted roughly 8 hours before fading, an astonishing achievement at that time. Eastman ran the research division of a company called Fox and Henderson Exhibition Works, and Elijah Buzkowski was a Russian-born Englishman who was an apprentice there, and Eastman was concentrating on camera technology, and his use of the images was, in his mind, simply a throwaway component of his research on camera technology. More to come in round 2.
Interesting. We're learning about the resolution of photographs, it sounds like. Darren, what do you think of Chris's story so far?
Well, I am a little bit familiar with the history of photography, and I'm surprised not to hear about a certain Frenchman named Daguerre
English.
Yeah,
English.
English? You say
Oh no,
Daguerre
sorry.
was-
Daguerre, yeah, no, Daguerre, but Daguerre was doing his stuff in France. These guys were
Exactly.
in London.
and the eponymous creator of the daguerreotype. And if you own an original daguerreotype photo from the 1800s, it's worth quite a bit of money indeed. And yet, no mention at all of the most famed of all photographers.
Someone's being called out. Carlos, what do you think?
Oh.
You know what? I'll second that and say I didn't hear the name Louis Kodak mentioned once.
Oh,
Or Jack Polaroid for that matter.
oh, Jack
I
Polaroid.
think that
Jack
Chris
Polaroid.
plans on splaining us lies by making them sound like truths. He's going to manipulate stuff he learned from Bill Nye and try to scam us. Well, we won't be scammed again.
No.
Interesting. All right.
Bill Nye, the
Well,
lying guy.
Bill Nye the lying, Chris Nye the lying guy.
Oh.
Chris.
Chris.
Oh, wow. A lot of. The audience is impressed, Carlos. The audience is impressed. But Darren, we're going to give you a shot here at
right.
your resolution, and you're going to fill us in right now.
Well, my story comes from the cultural milestone that is Nicolas Cage's cinematic masterpiece, National Treasure 2: Book of Secrets. And central to the plot of this film, that was frankly snubbed by the American Film Institute's top 100 film list, is a pair of matching desks made from the timbers of the ship HMS Resolute. In the film, one desk is in the Oval Office and the other matching desk is located in Buckingham Palace. But the truth is, there are actually 3 desks made from the salvaged timbers of HMS Resolute. The first is indeed in the Resolute office, or in the Oval Office, is also called the Hayes desk, as it was given to President Rutherford B. Hayes in 1880. And the second desk is actually not in Buckingham Palace, but on Queen Victoria's yacht. But the one that's really interesting is the third desk, which currently sits in a whaling museum in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Now, as to the reason why 3 desks were made, that's where it gets really interesting, and I'll get to that in the next 2 segments. Tick, tick, tick.
Oh, all right. Hey, Chris, what do you think of Darren's story about the HMS Resolute?
Well, first of all, he used Nick Cage and the word masterpiece in the same sentence.
Obviously.
That's the first one. Secondly, he mentioned that one of the desks is on Queen Victoria's yacht. Queen Victoria, I happen to know, was in her reign during the 1851 London World's Fair that I mentioned. So you're telling me that there was a yacht from the 1850s where there's a desk and it's still around today? I know that English keep a lot of things in museums, but I find that a little bit stretchy, and I'm going to use Carlos's technique of a lot of hand motions to make my argument here. I think he's trying to stretch the truth and cover our eyes with his lies.
Queen Victoria, by the way, was also around at the same time as Kaiser Wilhelm. And no history says whether or not she advised him on anything.
Hey-o! Another callback to our old friend, the advisor to the Kaiser. Carlos,
Yeah.
what's your opinion here on Darren's take?
I mean, Darren makes the HMS Resolute sound like it was a damn IKEA. We're just making out different desks and different sizes, and you get a desk, and you get a desk, and you like the only thing it was good for was desks. And why would anyone need a desk at a whaling factory or plant or
Museum.
whatever? Do you put the lard on top of the desk and use it to clear off the lard? No. I don't need to use all my hand gestures, which are authentic and natural, to challenge this business from Darren.
By lard, I assume you mean blubber, but
Yes, lard, blubber. Oh, the semantics, potato, tomato.
lard blubber.
Cooked, you can fry tomatoes in it. I mean,
You could fry
Fried green
blubber.
lard.
There you go. All right. Well, I don't know how a desk would survive 170 years if it's been treated like a butcher block. But speaking of which, Carlos, you're gonna go next. You ready?
Yes.
Let's do it.
there we go.
I want to take us back to the years of 2013, into 2013, beginning of 2014. A lot was happening in our little country called America. We had the Snowden leaks. We had Obamacare came out. You rolled out Obamacare, and it was a little bungled at the time. Supreme Court found for gay marriage. Gay marriage, okay, nationwide. Federal government shut down. All these crazy things happened. So, of course, one of the most important things that Congress had to deal with at the time was H.R. 2617. Yes, of course, it was the resolution to create the Apollo Lunar Landing Legacy Act and make parts of the moon a national park. Yes, make parts of the moon a national park, as in within the nation. 2 Democrats, U.S. Rep. Don Edwards and co-rep Eddie Bernice Johnson, they co-sponsored the bill. They put it out there and they said, hey, you know, on the moon, all the places where there might be Apollo stuff from the 5 missions, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all those missions, that's a park now. We need to make that a park. Did they succeed? We'll find out.
I would love to find out, but I also want to find out Chris's opinion on Carlos's take on an Apollo Lunar Legacy Park.
All right. Well, the first thing is way to go back into history, Carlos, back 2013, 14. I love it. But I would love for him at some point tonight to spell for us the spelling of nationwide, the nationwide movement for gay marriage. And then he's, I mean, you know, as an American, I know that we are sometimes arrogant, but are we that arrogant that we try to make part of the moon a national park? And he also mentioned in his listing of, and he's very good at this, he lists a lot of details in his list when he's bluffing. He listed Apollo 13 in his series of things. And we all know from Tom Hanks, great historian, actor that we know, that Apollo 13 actually did not land on the moon. So, you know, unless we're using pieces from the stuff that someone else went up and got from the capsule that they had to abandon in space, I find that part to be the chink in his armor of his story.
Some holes in the cheese that's on the moon. Darren, what's your take?
Well, unlike Carlos, I was alive when Apollo 11, which was the first mission to land on the moon, landed on the moon. So I don't skip Apollo 11. As for the rest of them, I won't ask and I won't tell about those. That's a gay marriage reference.
Okay. Wow. That's quite a leap. All right. Well, hey, that's all 3 of our historians for round 1. So you know what? It's time for our next round, Tech Adam.
It's time for round 2.
Darren, we're going to give you the next go round. So your shorter time limit, which is 60 seconds, starts right now.
All right, so quick history lesson. 1845, Sir John Franklin goes looking for the Northwest Passage, and he's never seen again. So starting in 1847, the British mount numerous expeditions to find Franklin, and all of them fail. And almost 10 years later, it's 1854, and the Brits send one last expedition to see if they can find anything from the Franklin expedition. And leading that expedition is the ship HMS Resolute. But they fail again when Resolute gets trapped in sea ice. And, you know, the crew manages to hike across the ice to relative safety at Beechy Island. But the Resolute is abandoned and lost until 1 year later when an American whaling captain finds her over 1,200 miles from where she was abandoned. They enter the ship and they find the captain's table is set for dinner with a silver platter on the table and bottles of fine liquor set out.
A haunted ship, you say? A ghost ship? What do you think of that, Chris?
First of all, there's ice at Beechy Island. I'm having a hard time believing that. And then, I mean, he's just basically, I think he's watched a couple of movies over the holiday break that we all had, and he's just he's mashing them all together here with National Treasure and this ghost ship story with you know, and then there's intrigue about everyone was missing, and so I'm not buying it.
I did sign up for Disney Plus.
Okay. Carlos, what do you say?
Okay, so first of all, Beachy Island, fake name. Secondly, are we to understand that a British and HMS Her Majesty's crew, a naval crew, abandoned a ship? Sir, I've seen Master and Commander multiple times. They chase a French boat across underneath South America. They go above and beyond. At no point is there any suggestion that a British naval crew would just let's leave it, everyone. We're gonna leave the boat. It's a perfect mid-meal. Let's leave the boat and go on our way. You win some, you lose some. No, 1,000 times no.
Well said, Nationwide.
Yes, that's right. We've got the proper spelling. No,
What?
that was our old friend I Don't Pull Out, and he's reporting Nationwide is properly spelt this way. Thank you to our old friend I Don't Pull Out.
I need you on my side. All right,
He needs Nationwide
Be on
on
my
his
side.
side. Yes. Well, you know who else we need on our side is our next historian, which we just heard from Darren. Let's go with Chris. Chris, are you ready?
I
want to hear more about the early days of Eastman and photography. Go.
All right. So, being only an apprentice level person, Elijah Bashkowski was not seen as someone who would develop worthwhile achievements at the company. So he was given menial tasks, and he was mostly working with the side components that were used to help the development of the camera technology, the physical camera technology. But his handwritten notes, Bukowski's handwritten notes, discovered in company archives decades later, showed that he was convinced that the advancement Eastman's team was making with physical camera equipment technology was working hand in hand with improvements in image technology. He was so frustrated that he even had a transcription of a conversation with Eastman in which he was told, "No one cares about the clarity of pictures. A painting of a flower or a photo of a flower are both recognized as a flower." Eastman forced Bukowski to abandon his research on image quality, but he kept working on it on his own and taking these notes. And however, the world would have to wait almost 100 more years to reap the benefits of this guy's work because he was an apprentice and he was a peon.
Wow. Goodness. You would think the essence of photography was how clear it is and its resolution, but Chris is saying, nay, there was someone in the early days of photography that didn't believe such. What do you think, Darren?
The outlook is unclear, as the Magic 8 Ball would say.
My sources say no. Carlos?
Way to dodge the question, Darren. Best of times, worst of times. Over there, covering his butt. I'm going to say that back in the day, Chris is suggesting that because this guy was an apprentice, he wasn't taken seriously. Everyone who is famous, everyone who we've covered who is famous from the before times was an apprentice. At some point, it starts with blank was an apprentice, and then they studied like out of their house, and then they became the foremost whatever. This is how it worked back in time. Okay, so I find it hard to believe. Exactly. So I find it hard to believe. Don't use my truth to cover your lie.
Way back.
All right, Adam.
I have to agree.
Oh
Mickey Mouse famously was an apprentice.
My point is, it's ridiculous that this guy wasn't taken seriously just because he was an apprentice.
Okay. Well, you know what else is ridiculous to not take seriously is Carlos, and we want to hear more about the park, the national park on the moon. Carlos, tell us.
This was a resolution to put the national park on the moon, the Apollo Lunar Landing Legacy Act. Now, why? The co-sponsor of the bill, Donna Edwards, or the sponsor of the bill, Donna Edwards, she was a ranking member of the House Space Subcommittee, and she was concerned that the stuff left on the moon would eventually be subject to the possibility of being pirated, being stolen, being damaged as more companies and other nations become more moonfaring. And we already know, I think China already put something on the moon. So they were like, we need to protect it. And what's there to protect? The Apollo 11 landing site, Tranquility Base. And I do apologize. I misspoke earlier. There was Apollo 11, the first one on the moon, then 12 and 13. And while 13 didn't land, one of the devices of 13 that was separated did orbit the moon, and eventually it had to crash there somewhere. So that's something too. There's a bunch of stuff on the moon from Apollo missions, including 13.
Oh, Carlos affirming some of the challenges that were made earlier. Chris, what do you think?
Well, I'm now even more convinced that through all of his hand gestures that Carlos, and I know this on good information, that Carlos was visiting family during the holiday break. And I'm sure during one of those times, visiting family, just catching up on things, that they had a Honeymooners episode in the background, and he saw Jackie Gleason doing all this, and he said, to the moon, and he got the idea for this show, I'm going to use the moon. That is what I'm going with. He's trying to get all of, he's trying to distract us with all of this going on here.
Darren, do you think there's a distraction going on in Carlos's story?
Well, here's the thing. I think that like the moon, like Antarctica, is protected by international treaty. But also, we're talking about a resolution of Congress who, like, I'm going to say literally today, voted for one guy to be Speaker of the House, and he didn't make it. So they said, well, let's try that again. And it didn't work. So they said, well, let's try that again. And it didn't work. So what I'm saying is they're not known for, like, much common sense in Congress. So that makes it more believable.
Interesting. That seems to be a vote for Carlos being a...
Well, that's the only thing that got voted for today.
Oh,
Was that a
Darren's
declaration? Was that an accusation?
roasting Congress today.
Where's
Very
your rim
nice.
shot, Adam? We need the
Rim
rim shot right there.
There it is.
Too late.
There
It's
it
too
is.
late.
Timing is... Never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was round 2. We're going to go into round 3, Adam.
Round 3. Oh, whoa.
There it is.
Here we are.
Round 3.
We're here.
Okay, Carlos, I don't think you got the pleasure to start off a round yet, did you?
No, I have not.
All right, I want to hear the rest of this amazing story about a proposed park on the moon.
Okay. All right. So what would the well, first of all, I want to say, Darren, you are correct. There's a 1967 law, some sort of law with the United Nations where there was a treaty or something that said no country could have territory on the moon, which is one of the reasons probably why this resolution was never passed. HR 2617, as part of the 113th Congress, was never passed. However, HR 2617, same HR number, was passed in the 117th Congress, but it was a different resolution. I guess they could use the same number. So, Secretary of the Interior would be defined as the administrator of the historical park if it were to happen. They do the proper monitoring of the lunar landing sites. It also, there you go. And for further, the preservation of the history of the Apollo program.
I'm going to report 2617 to HR. Chris, what do you think of that story?
Well, and I'm having a hard time with this because the stuff on the moon is 50 years old. So by now, other countries probably have more advanced technology than that, as we do as well. And then secondly, I will say that the one thing I know, as Darren pointed out about, Congress and their ability to be unable to do many things, they actually have. There really is a subcommittee on subcommittees in the U.S. Congress, and that fact that I know from prior research makes me think that there might be a sliver of truth in Carlos' story. But I reserve the right to hear Darren and to figure out which one of them two is bluffing.
A sliver, like a crescent, maybe.
Oh.
But I know that I don't pull out, doesn't believe anything Carlos says, because he believes nobody has ever landed on the moon.
People like him are why we need to preserve the stuff on the moon.
Darren, what do you say?
Well, basically, the stuff that is left on the moon is really just garbage. So it's litter. And we're basically saying Congress had said, well, we're going to pass a law that says we're going to preserve litter and make it a national park. And I really can't think of anything more American than that.
That does sound like us.
There is an American flag
Rough.
on the moon, sir. Are you referring to that flag as litter?
Apparently so.
I think somebody disagrees. They were ever
He
there.
doubled down.
He did it.
doubled down.
He
He
went
leaned
there.
into it. He leaned into
You
it.
know who else needs to go there is Chris for his final chapter in round for round 3. Your final chapter for your story. Let's hear it, Chris.
God,
All right.
yeah, let's do it. Okay, Chris, you're booming. Here it comes. Let's do it.
Okay, so Elijah Bukowski became obsessed with this concept. He realized that breaking down images into pieces made them last longer because the strength found through combining a large number of smaller images was more powerful and lasted longer than a single image that would last a short amount of time. So he is essentially talking about what we now know as pixel theory, creating sharper images by bringing groups of smaller pieces together. But had Eastman and the other executives listened to this apprentice, Elijah Bukowski, who knows how quickly what might have influenced camera technology and possibly sped up the development of movie images and that whole industry. So again, it comes back to similar to electric cars and electric battery. They had years and years before they were accepted, just like technology on pixels and resolution.
So they didn't use pixel theory in the original film?
His research was found later on, as I said, in company archives and published. And the guys at Owens Corning would later, 50 years later, make huge advancements in television image quality using some of his theories, some of Bukowski's theories from 50 years before.
So he was voting for more pixels. Aha! Now I get it. All right, Carlos, what do you say?
I find it odd that Chris feels the need to use this man's full name every time he says it, as if he's trying to secret it into being real. Like Elijah Bukowski, not Bukowski. Elijah Bukowski. I also find it odd that someone would find research in the archives years and years and years, decades later, that make it clear that the company dropped the ball and say, you know what we should do with this? Let's show the world how we dropped the ball. Instead of
that never happened.
Not showing the world. We can just keep it to ourselves.
Okay, well, Carlos is very passionate about this, and we thank. And I know many people were pulling out the films out of their cameras, but if you're also someone who's not called I Don't Pull Out, you're also welcome to comment on today's episode. Darren, what do you think about this tale of ancient film?
I mean, he's talking about an era where people seriously thought women couldn't own property, and yet they've got these advanced ideas on pixels and digital resolution and things that didn't happen till 100 years later. It seems unlikely that they were that enlightened in that time period.
In the 1800s, you know what else was discovered? A litany of things were discovered, as we see it on other shows in the 1800s. Come on.
Well, a famous woman who was descended from Eastman, Miss Linda McCartney, she knew her stuff. So I'm just going to say that. I Don't Pull Out has something to say. He loves buying a new TV every year with a different amount of pixels. It's his New Year's resolution.
There it is.
Where's the rim shot, Adam?
I did the ding because it was on point, but sure.
Oh, he
Too
gets
late.
them both. He gets them both.
I know. All right, I'll take
He
it back.
gets them both. Hold on, we got one more person to wrap up their story. I think that is Mr. Darren there. You ready,
true.
Darren?
I am ready.
I just want to remind you and everybody out there, this is your time to start thinking. Darren is the last story of the show. He's finishing, and everyone should be thinking about accusing who the bluff is. If anyone has any guesses in the audience, don't forget to submit your suspicion.
That's right. We want to hear your votes, so go ahead and type them into the comments section that you have access to, and we'll hear Darren's story right now.
Okay, so the HMS Resolute is sailed back to America and rebuilt, largely due to the support of a wealthy ship owner from New Bedford named Henry Grinnell. And after she's rebuilt, Resolute is sailed back to England and presented to Queen Victoria as a gift of friendship from the United States. And then she serves 20 more years as an active duty ship and finally is salvaged for timber. Resolute, not Queen Victoria. And then the Queen holds a contest to design and build 3 desks from the salvaged timber. One is given to President Hayes. The second is a writing desk for the Queen's yacht. And the third is a smaller lady desk presented to the widow of Henry Grinnell. And it's called the Grinnell desk. And it's now in the New Bedford Whaling Museum.
Oh, interesting. So these aren't just desks that were on the ship. These were made from the hull, right? Wood from the ship?
They were fabricated from wood salvaged from the boat. Because it was a
Interesting. Interesting. Carlos, what do you think of that story?
So that boat was big enough to only be able to construct 3 desks from the wood.
Very small boat, yeah.
Yeah, pretty small boat indeed, Darren. Pretty small boat. Like, why wouldn't they make more desks out of it? Wouldn't more people want pieces of the any boat? If someone said to me, "Hey, there was a big naval boat, we've broken it down. Would you like a desk from it?" I'd say yes, thank you. But instead, there are only 3. Okay,
There was a surplus of desks in 1880. What can I say?
I see. Okay,
A lot of writing.
and the U.S. gave the boat back to Queen Victoria. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice of them.
They were filling
Yeah,
in.
real nice. Real nice.
Chris, what do you think?
Well, there's a couple things here. First of all, they sailed back to America and rebuilt the boat and sailed it back to England. How did they sail it back to rebuild it? That jumped out at me. And then Darren is famous for dropping these little nods to himself in his wit, and he's a very witty man. And he actually used the word fabricated in one of his last sentences. He said fabricated from the boat, just as his story is fabricated.
Okay. Well, that's Chris's opinion. But we want to hear your opinion, the audience. So go ahead and type out who you think is the bluff. And you know what? I also want to hear the historians. Let's make some accusations. Darren,
Let's do it.
what's your take here? Who do you vote for? Who's telling the truth and who's bluffing?
Ooh, this is a tough one, but I'm going to have to go with Carlos as the bluff. As dumb as Congress can be, there's clear international law that says you can't claim part of the moon as part of your country. So I'm going to say you can't make a national park, and even American congressmen would not be stupid enough to do that.
Okay. Chris, what's your take?
I found a lot of question marks and flags pop up during Carlos' story, but because I know that there is a U.S. congressional subcommittee on subcommittees, I wouldn't put it past them to try to do something like this. So I'm going to say that Darren is the bluff with his fabrication and his nod to himself with the word fabrication in his last sentence.
Well, we've got a vote for Darren, a vote for Carlos. Carlos, who do you think is bluffing?
Oh, this is tough because, again, I find it odd that Chris would continue to use the man's full name every time he described him. But at the same time, there's a lot you can fabricate just with the story of lore of a whatever ship from the 1800s, a naval ship. But if I vote for Darren and not Chris, and it's Chris, then Chris technically wins because no one will have chosen him. So do I want to risk it? Do I want to be right, or do I want to make sure Chris doesn't get the W on this? I'm going to say Darren. I think Darren is the bluff.
We got 2 votes for Darren, no votes for Chris, 1 vote for Carlos, and I don't pull out thinks that Darren's story may seem the most sus, but Chris himself seems the most sus. So he's voting for Chris. And Lauren,
the Nicolas Cage, okay?
well, Lauren says Carlos is bluffing. So people got their opinions. People got their opinions. So, Actually, the only person to vote for Chris is an audience member. Otherwise, none of the historians have voted for Chris. You know what, Adam? I think it's time to reveal the truth.
Oh, boy, I think it might be. Alan, I'm going to have you drop out of our stage here, and we're going to line up our perpetrators, and we're going to find out, was your bluff tonight? Could it be Darren? Was your bluff Chris? Or could it have been Carlos? I alone know, and I will now reveal your bluff this entire night was Chris.
Oh, Chris evaded all of the historians, but didn't fool our audience member. I don't pull out. I think I count
Well
2
done.
children there for I don't pull out. So that's a very, very. You need more sex. I don't pull out is what I'm trying to say. Anyway,
I knew it.
Carlos!
Elijah Burkowski. That was the key.
There it is.
Yeah.
Oh my
You don't say
Thank
the
you.
person's full name over and over again.
he's got your tell. He's got your tell, Chris. He knows. Lauren, thank you for guessing Carlos, but he was telling the truth. He was
Amazing.
telling the truth about a national park on the moon. Sounds pretty cool.
learned
Well,
something.
it didn't happen. They did not. Resolution HR 2617, the 113th Congress, was not passed.
Let's do it.
There is no.
Let's make it happen.
I underestimated the stupidity of Congress.
Well, that sounds like
Thank you,
everybody had a
Lauren.
good time.
Lauren approves. She
Oh,
says,
yeah.
well done all around and a fun one. Thank you for
And
tuning in, Lauren.
We all
Appreciate
learned
it.
something tonight.
Yeah,
I
we
learned
did.
something tonight.
Adam, take us home.
Let's take it home. Alan, thank you so much for hosting and being our amazing center point for the show. Thank you, Carlos and Darren and Chris. And I have been your announcer and tech. Come join us. Tune in next week. We're here every week at History Bluffs. See you then.